What is up, everybody? We are back 2 days in a row. Of course, yesterday we had that great show covering the NFL, but today we're doing things a little bit different. We're going to the college roots and wrapping up the season because it was quite the mess. Of course, if you're new to this channel, I'm Cole from JCP, and I'm joined by
Chooch. That's right.
That is correct. Yes. We do have a third member traditionally, but something came up, so just the two of us, but we will deliver on three times the fun. You better believe that. So, when I think about this year in college football, I think about a lot of things. I mean, this video realistically could be going on for 10 hours because you could have that, if not more. So, the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of this season is the transfer portal and the rankings from the transfer portal. And as we go on throughout this show, we're going to talk about, was it as important as everybody made it out to be? Was it this big, huge thing that altered teams and made a massive difference? Or was it, a nice thing to look at to see all these players coming in and how did they gel and work together? So to start off with the list here, I'm going to do the top 25 off of last year's, this year that we're wrapping up, transfer portal. And it went like this. Colorado was number one with 51 commits. They had that whole mass exodus, if you remember, of Colorado players. And
Wow.
then they drafted in all these different guys from everywhere. And Coach Prime built this team through the portal. Number two was Ole Miss, and Lane Train was ramping it up. Number three was the Trojans from USC, and that was a pretty interesting move, if I do say so myself. Four was Auburn, five was LSU, six was Florida State, seven was Miami, eight was Oklahoma, 9 was Oregon, 10 was UCLA, 11 was Arkansas, 12 was Louisville, 13 was SMU, 14 Kentucky, 15 Arizona State, 16 Florida, 17 Michigan, 18 California, 19 Indiana, 20 BYU, 21 TCU, 22 Oklahoma State, 23 Baylor, 24 Maryland, and 25 Wisconsin. So those are some of the teams as we progress on the show. We're looking and keeping that in the back of our minds because a lot of things happened this season from, now as we start, we're talking about the beginning of the season. And as we progress to the final bits of it, that's going to be an interesting topic to bring up and to see the effectiveness of how important the transfer portal was. So, Chooch, to start off with a question here, what was the best team, in your opinion, at the beginning of the season?
Cole, after I've been going through it here and I was thinking, I'm like, man, who really stuck out early this year that was kind of like, they're going to be that New Mexico State, they're going to be surprising us. Or was it Nevada? Hold on. Anyways, what I was getting to.
Mhm.
Oh, my Lord, I can't find the team anymore. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Oh, here we go. Navy. Navy started off 1-3, looking bleak. looking like it was going to be a real rough go of it to start the year. And all of a sudden, come week 5, week 4, bam, click it in. The close loss to South Florida, and the Navy team the defense played a lot better from the South Florida game on after giving up 44. They didn't give up above 32 until they played SMU later in the season. But that's besides the point. Navy, best of. I'm sorry, I went wrong on this one. My bad.
Oh, that is all right.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of Rice, who kind of surprised us a little earlier based on their performances. Usually, they had a double OT win against Houston. They stomped Texas Southern. We're like, okay, cool. And then, they let up 42 to South Florida, which a lot of teams did this year. But they didn't get blown out by Texas the first game, which kind of which surprised a lot of us. You, me, and Pizza. And you know what? That's my best of first.
I like that. As for my best of the beginning of the season, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, I think it was Colorado because, coming into this year, there was a lot of questions, especially with this Colorado team. And it was like, okay, Coach Prime, he talks so much about this team. He gets so excited, but is he giving a lip service? How much of this is real? I think there was a lot to be answered for this team and a lot of doubters early on in the year. But because they were like, okay, there's no way the portal guys are going to click. It's a completely new team. I mean, there's no way that this team is going to produce anything even memorable. And then you get to that first week and they knock off TCU, who, heading into this year, that's the national champion runner up. Everybody thought they were going to be an elite team, and he almost returned back to form. So that was a shocker, to start off. Then in week 2, you have a little bit of a slower game with Nebraska, but you eventually get the wheels turning and you take over in the second half and you show what Colorado can be. And then College Game Day went to Boulder, which is something I don't think you could have talked into existence at any point in the offseason. That was a shock when they went to the Colorado State game. And then that game goes to OT. Colorado fights. They're 3-0. And then the next week after that, it was the big showdown with Oregon, the big show me game. And that kind of was the start of the decline. But I don't think there was a hotter team in terms of, shocking people, in terms of playing with ambition and fire than this Colorado team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
So what about, let's do the flip side here. We talked about the best, but how about the worst of the beginnings, the worst start?
I know I went on about Navy earlier, but I'm going by team standards here and by what we expect from this team. But I'm going to say Oklahoma State.
Ooh.
That rough 2-2 start with the 2 straight losses to South Alabama and Iowa State. Mind you, a South Alabama game, they only scored 7.
I thought they got shut out. That's right. They did score.
Bleak Big 12 team, being big time Big 12 team against a bleak Sunbelt team, getting housed like that in your house. It don't get much darker than that. Then they go on the road and lose by 7 to Iowa State, to a conference opponent. Just hurt. And then they were able to turn it around. But I'll save that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's a solid pick for what we were expecting here. I mean, we're bringing it all the stops out, as they say, for this one. Um, for my worst of to start the season is Nebraska, because the expectations for this team, and I'm more so basing this off of the internet fans and the Nebraska fans to some degree, because when they heard that Matt Rule was coming, they're like, okay, culture's going to shift. We're going to start it off week 1 with the bang, beating Minnesota. Then we'll have an interesting one in Colorado, and we'll probably be close. And then from there we'll go on, and we'll continue with that momentum. And those first 2 weeks got a lot of people off the early hype train. Week 1 they play Minnesota, they only score 10 points, they give up 13, they lose on a last second field goal, and Nebraska's faith in that team was a little bit deflated, especially if you went on, Twitter or whatever. You just saw these fans going, "Oh man, like we were ready for something, and we're getting more of the same." And then you can continue on to the Colorado game in Boulder. As I mentioned previously, they get hammered, and that offense looked very lost. um, so it was just rough sledding for Nebraska. Then they had 2 cupcakes after that, and they were able to win both of those games, and they kind of made it interesting on paper before the Michigan game. But then the game happened, and they got absolutely dominated on both fronts of the game. So it was not looking hopeful for our friends down there in the crimson and white. So that is who I will start off with for the worst. I know it was his first year, coming into Nebraska and all, and that does give some grace. But in terms of what this fan base was expecting, that's not the way that you wanted that started off. And then to add on to that point, and like I said, remember we're going to talk about the transfer portal effectiveness, as you could see at the bottom there. At this point on in the season, at this early stage, you had a lot of folks kind of twisted between the transfer portal, because it was like, well, LSU, they were high on the list, and they got destroyed by Florida State in week 1, but then they had a few rebounded games, and it's like, wow, maybe this transfer portal is the way to go, is the way to get teams ready, if they're missing on places. And then you had, some of the flip sides with Colorado at this point, to where a lot of excitement was building. Like, hey, he just built the team from the ground up, from the portal. This should show new coaches the way. And then you had the questionable ones with like Ole Miss, to where it was like, yeah, you look good, but are you legit? And we're getting to a point to where we'll answer that question. But it's been so far, I'd say mostly positive was the thought of the transfer portal, at least up to this point in the season.
Yeah. We saw, like you say, we saw early with guys kind of certain programs were getting better help from the transfer portal than other ones were. It was kind of like if a program really needed a certain type of guy, they got it, and it really helped them big time. Um, but then obviously there were the guys that came and filled it, and it was just kind of like, you're not doing anything to help this team. Why did we get you in the first place? And this,
Right.
we see this evolve over the year where it's like, okay, we got to start relying on homegrown guys again, because some of the guys, or they're you guys are there as depth. That's what it's going to turn into. It all
Yeah.
evolves.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. Like this year was definitely a trial and error for the transfer portal and kind of addressing what is it going to do for teams, because this is the first year that, the transfer portal has been this wild. So let's get to the mid part of the season here. This is where Colorado kind of gets exposed, kind of gets hit off the hype train a little bit and falls back to reality. And so it's so awesome in college football how that happens. You see some teams rising at certain points, some teams falling, and then making a good adjustment to their season. But Chooch, who would you say really owned the middle portion of the season, if you had to say?
Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
Ooh.
Yeah, they started off 3-1, but then, they beat Sam Houston. They beat Mid 10 State. They lost to Liberty, but I mean, almost everyone did. And then they beat Western Kentucky. So they had a real good middle portion. They're only that one loss to Liberty. They were coming out, and I mean, we even brought them up a couple times because we were kind of like, hey, they're playing not bad teams and are actually not doing terrible. We were worried about the offense, but that at this point started to hit its stride. The defense was always good. They were consistent. Actually, in fact, they got a little bit scary to play against at this point in time. So that's why I'm taking the Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
I like that, kind of. And a team that just rise to conference play this year. I don't think anybody expected what we got out of them this year. All right, my pick out of the best teams for the middle portion of the season who went out and really got their name remembered was Georgia Southern. This was a team that we talked about a lot on the show. I'd say
A couple times.
maybe 10, 9 times out of the
Yeah.
whole show. So the reason why is this team went on quite the run um, in the beginning to mid half of the season, to where they were looking unbeatable. Like they just kept beating team after team after team. They beat Georgia State. They beat, who was it? I just had it on my notes. They beat UL Monroe. They lost to James Madison, but granted,
Just about everyone did.
so at home, which was kind of like a wake up call to everybody. Like, hey, we're here to play football, and we're kind of good at it. So they, in my opinion, had a dominant spring there in the middle. It wasn't really sustainable for the whole season, but during that middle portion, there were few teams who were even close to that level of consistency at that level in the Sun Belt. And then the last part of the best of and, or actually, excuse me, missed over the worst part here, Chooch. Who would you say had the worst stretch of the middle?
Oh, that's the UCF Knights all the way. Yeah, they started off 3-1, but then you drop one to Baylor, close game. Then you get housed by Kansas, and then you go into Oklahoma and you almost win it.
Oh, and then, yep.
Yep. And then you finally beat Cincinnati by 2. So applauds. Plumlee's gone at least. Maybe there's hope that a quarterback can get back there that can protect the football like Blake Bortles did back in his day. So yeah, Gus has got some work to do.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting story with UCF going forward. But that's so hard to top. I mean, how do you get worse than UCF? Oh man, like they had one of the worst stints going forward in that middle portion. So my middle part here that I don't know if you could say quite matches up to what Chooch says, but it's very close. I'm gonna go with Virginia. This was
Okay.
a team that just like in the later half of the year, they got it going, like against North Carolina and stuff. But if you look at this mid portion, it was just sad. Like they had William and Mary, and they were able to eke that one out. But then you look at some of their losses. They lost to Boston College. They lost to North Carolina State. They lost to Maryland, and the hits just kept coming for this Virginia team. Now, like I said, before you get your pitchforks out, they did have a better, end of the season, but at this midpoint, it was looking really hopeless for the Cavalier faithful, especially that OT loss to Miami. That it was like, oh, you were so close. You gave them one heck of a game, but you just couldn't get it down. And then the next week after that, you get smacked by Georgia Tech. So it was really looking down for Virginia in that middle portion. And then Chooch finishing off the best of portion, who had the best end of the season.
Oh, that'd be the Arizona Wildcats. You,
Oh,
we were sitting there at the Washington State game going, this Arizona team's playing a lot better ball than people give them credit for. They just won 44-6 in Washington State. And then they get to Oregon State coming in, and this is where this starts. They win by 3. They beat UCLA, and then they go on the road to Colorado, win that one by 3. They not only beat Utah, they almost embarrassed Utah. They kick the tar out of Arizona State, and then to end it, they cap it with a 6-point win over Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl.
which was amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So you took my first pick. I was gonna go there too with Arizona, but I did come with a backup plan. My end of the season pick is the Missouri Tigers.
Yep.
This team, when I tell you, like every week, it was excitement with them because it was like, okay, they had that loss to LSU, and it was like, all right, what do they do now? What is this identity of this Missouri team? How are they going to come out? How are they going to be different? They beat Kentucky. They demolish South Carolina. Then they had that big showdown with Georgia, which everybody was so excited. Can they hang around? Are they going to be frauds? They hung around. They couldn't get the job done, but they were extremely there, like when nobody could hang with Georgia. So that spoke volumes of this team. Then after that, was it like, oh, they're going to phone it in for the rest of the year? Who cares anymore? Not this team. They destroy Tennessee. Then after that, they play Florida. They hang on against a Florida team that was playing inspired football. Then they hammer down on Arkansas. And then in their bowl game, I know, anybody can say what they want. Oh, it wasn't the full Ohio State team. It shouldn't count. I don't want to hear the excuses. This Missouri team defense won this game. Like they were killing the Ohio State offense. So, say what you will. Arizona or Missouri, in my opinion, are the best two answers here. Let us know in the comments, though, who you would say had the best of these three parts of the season. Now, to wrap up the worst of in the college football, who had the worst end of the year, Chooch?
The Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
Ooh.
A team that was looking really, really good. But then, as always, the second they sniff the name Ohio State for the week they're supposed to play them, they turn into the Rutgers team from 7 years ago that couldn't play a lick of football with anyone. 35-16 loss to Ohio State. And then you go to Iowa, you get shut out. and then you go to Penn State, you only score 6, and then you go to Maryland, and they put up 42 on you like it was their day job. But there was one silver lining. You did happen to be a garbage Miami team by 7. So congrats. You beat a team.
We love
Congrats. That, Cole, is the worst team to end the season. And because they're from Jersey.
I love it. I'm actually gonna go in a different neck of the woods. I'm gonna go with North Carolina.
Ooh.
Now, we've seen this story so many times before that it's really not shocking to anybody at this point, but I gotta point it out. You play Georgia Tech on the road, blow that game. Then the week after that, you destroy Campbell. I mean, congrats, it's Campbell. We all kind of expected that. Then you play Duke and you almost blow it. It took 2 overtimes to get over Duke without Riley Leonard, I believe, in that game. If somebody wants to fact check, let me do that actually. I'm pretty sure Leonard was out this game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Leonard was out, and you gave up 45. Then after that, you play Clemson, not even close. You play your biggest rival in week 13, the Wolfpack, and you get dominated. And then in your bowl game, you're like, all right, you know what? Maybe salvage the season, maybe have a good send off. You scored 10 points against West Virginia. I mean, no hate to West Virginia, they're a good team and all, but like 10 and you gave up 30. Yikes. So yeah, in my opinion, North Carolina had the worst end of the year. That was tough to watch.
Yeah. And it's disappointing too because that offense has so much potential, especially with Tez.
Yeah, Tez and Drake May.
Like they did better without Tez.
Which
But
was
typical Mac
shocking.
Brown defense recently, there's lack of that.
No, I agree. And I think it was Gene Chizik too as their DC this year. Again, somebody feel free to fact check and prove me wrong if you want, because I swear I thought it was Chizik. But that was that was typical Mac Brown. Like in whoever he has hired there, just not living up to the expectations of what this team could have been. They had the tools to make it deep. I'm not saying a natty necessarily, but maybe a Final Four, maybe even a New Year's Six, and the wheels fell off. All right, so Chooch, to answer this question here, how important is the transfer portal looking at the fullness of this season and leading into next year? Um, should teams surround themselves with the transfer portal, or should it be a mix with recruiting, or should it be recruiting as a whole? And kind of just the transfer portal if you absolutely need to. Like, what did this year teach us, in your opinion?
I think this year taught us. I mean, Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin did it to almost perfection this year. He really found almost like a perfect balance. It seems between guys leaving and guys coming in, but also balancing that between how good do you believe your recruiting class is compared to, okay, there's the film on these guys. There's the potential there. We see what the base is we have to work with, their quote unquote base. How can you tap into that and make that better? And that's what I think Lane's found a perfect balance to. And I think he's kind of writing the book to this whole process here. You go get the guys you need. You add a couple good depth pieces because people are going to get hurt. Positions are going to get hurt. If you're Ole Miss, your luck literally is the O line will fall apart.
Right.
So that's or like LSU, get receivers because our receivers are constantly battling some sort of toe injury or a hip injury or maybe another D lineman somewhere. Georgia, get more receivers, stuff like that. Just guys filling the needs they need that they can't get recruiting wise because maybe the guy I wanted's gone, or maybe the class didn't look too strong. So I was kind of like, yeah, I'll grab one or two, but I got to go get them from guys that I've played before. So I think that's what we're going to see happen here is the guys start to find that balance. And if Lane keeps doing what he's doing and he starts to perfect it, you're going to see the book written on this, and there's going to be a new era to football.
Yeah, I mean, it would have, because there's so many things like coaches and teams and examples that you could look at for the transfer portal, and I think that that's a tremendous, uh, Lane Kiffin in Ole Miss, because like you said, he really hit the nail on the head with this whole transfer portal thing, and he's adapted with the game. But then if you look at you mentioned LSU. I think Brian Kelly learned a lesson about the portal this year where he was like, much like all of us fans were like, okay, we're getting Omar Spates, we're getting Mason Lunford, we're getting Andre Sam, we're getting uh, who's the we're getting Logan Diggs. Like you looked at this transfer portal class for LSU and you're thinking, okay, there's a lot of star-studded guys here. Denver Harris, Deuce Chestnut, um who's the other guy? Aaron Anderson. That's who I was thinking of. There's so many guys that we got out of this portal. They're gonna come. They're gonna take over, and this should be a national title. And then you look at how all these guys panned out, and it was like, well, Andre Sam was pretty good. Logan Diggs was really good. Lunsford, you didn't even hear of. Omar Spates was a letdown. Ovie Agofu didn't really do all that much. J.K. Johnson, you couldn't even see him on the field half the time. Jordan Jefferson was good. Aaron Anderson, he he was there. Um, Jalen Lee didn't do a whole lot. Denver Harris pretty much got kicked off the team like week 6. Paris Shand was okay. Brandon Swinson was really good. Zy Alexander was okay. And it was like, oh, well, they had their moments. They had some guys, I'd say probably like 5 really impressive ones, and everybody else was like, wow, there really wasn't a whole lot of, production out of you in year 1. And then, you can also look at USC, who had the number 3 transfer portal class in the year. Of course, we're going off of 24/7 Sports, and you didn't really have any one of the transfers really step out. I mean, Bear Alexander had some decent plays, and I guess if I had to pick, he was like the best one out of the class. But everybody else was kind of lackluster. Maybe Marshawn Lloyd too. He was pretty good. So I don't know. The way I kind of see it is like you have to focus a little bit more on recruiting than you do in the portal. Because if you go extreme portal heavy, in even like Colorado, for example, it's gonna blow up in your face. There's only gonna be a few memorable guys from the portal, like Colorado literally went into the portal again and got a whole new O-line because of this problem. So, as for how I see the portal as of now, kind of a thumbs almost down. I'm not quite fully there yet, but I'm getting close.
There's a balance. I think coaches are going to find that balance. Also, I want to say one team that did execute this poorly is Miami. You're going to see
Oh
that
yeah.
happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. All right, so let's talk about the Final Four madness. I'm gonna hoist this over because that's the biggest part of the um, of a Final Four. So Chooch, What was the biggest shock in terms of who ended up taking home the Natty and just in general the journey there from all four teams, and how that went for each of them between Bama, Texas, Michigan, and Washington?
Well, I think the Bama loss was kind of a wake up to Nick. Like, yeah, this isn't it anymore. All the stuff that comes with this, and I'm no longer cheating. Um, so that's what's really. I think that was it. And then they lost a legend, he retired, the goat. Um, but besides that, for Bama, that was really all that was. In that was just, hey, we kind of got it happened. That was a terrible last play call. That shouldn't have been called. I think Nick Saban was, I'm fed up. I'm done. I think it's time for me to hang it up here. I got enough done. I've accomplished more than most anyone ever probably ever will again.
Right.
Um, so I think that was kind of the silver lining to Bama season. The weird silver lining, if you, yeah.
Yeah, and for Alabama too, I mean, they were a team, we've talked multiple times heading into the season about, yeah, they should have maybe four losses, three losses this year. And the fact that they did not, they only had two on the whole year, including the loss to Michigan, should speak volumes about how well coached they were and how much they had to change throughout the year, and believe as a team to get to that point. And I mean, it was no easy ride for Alabama. You had the whole SEC gauntlet. That's never easy. You had Texas at home, which again, they ended up losing that game, but that was a challenge. And to overcome that adversity when they looked lifeless after or during that Texas game, I've never seen a Nick Saban coach team more manhandled physically than in that game. So, salute for that. What about the third team in the equation? I just mentioned them, the Longhorns. What was your thoughts about them?
Um, a hell of a season, right? I think it. I think Texas is back on the map, right? Can we agree?
Yeah,
Or
I'd
are we
have to
still waiting to
agree.
see what they do without Quinn?
Well, Quinn is back next year.
I know that's kind of why I'm saying we're waiting to see what they do without him, or like where are we going with this?
Like I'm kind of on the we're back train, but I'm not fully there yet. I do think Sark had a bigger part to play than most will mention.
Yeah, okay, I'll agree with that. And honestly, I think we learned that Sark has a unique eye for some elite talent. So
Absolutely.
I think this is going to be. I think Texas has got a bright future. It's a tough game to lose, but you're shooting yourselves in the foot with penalties. You got to be more disciplined if you guys want to do something, and also beat Oklahoma. You won't have to worry about. We have to worry about some stuff like that. So you guys got this. Texas is in better hands than I think than the rest of them. So
Yeah, I mean that's for sure. Out of everyone here, I'd have to agree Texas is the most stable. I'd have to imagine. But to agree with your point there, like Texas again, only two losses on the year. First one was to Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. The other coming, of course, to Washington, which not a lot saw. Um, it was kind of a shocker to see that happen. And with Quinn Ewers coming back, this Texas team, they're looking for vengeance. Expect we saw JJ McCarthy, and we'll get to Michigan here shortly, but JJ McCarthy last year when they lost to TCU, he said, basically the goal is to be back here and we're going to do that. And everybody, myself included, was like, haha, yeah, okay. and then we get to here, which, like I said, we'll talk about them soon. Could you see something similar happening with Texas coming into next year, Chooch?
Sorry, what? Sorry, I was reading a headline. Sorry.
Oh, okay, sure. I just said, with JJ McCarthy in that TCU loss, and then he goes, we're gonna be back here, and we're gonna, in a sense, win the whole thing.
Right.
Could you see something similar with that happening with Quinn Ewers in Texas coming up this year?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. Barring what LSU does this year and what Ohio State looks like, they finally have a quarterback again.
For
Um,
the first time in so long.
um, what feels like so long, doesn't it?
Yeah, in reality, it's only like 2 years.
But they got Will Howard. Um, and they got Judkins.
Beast.
So, and Henderson returned. So this is going to be a very scary team. We all know the receiver room they got. But no, but I think back to the point. Yeah, I think Texas and LSU are probably the two, and what barring Oregon too. But those are I think that's your I think that's your Final Four next year.
Ooh, that's a bold prediction. I like
Mm-hmm.
that. Well, now we got 12, so gotta add 8 more
Oh
teams to
damn!
that
Yeah. Well, either
equation.
way, 4 of those teams are in. That's your Final Four.
Okay, I like that.
Getting
Um,
used to that still.
I know, it's so weird. So the next team on this list was the number 2 Washington Huskies, and they go undefeated. Biggest loss, of course, comes in the national title. Couldn't bring it home against Michigan, and of course, it even gets worse. They lose DeBoer to Alabama, and they hired Jed Fisher from Arizona. So I mean, I know it looks like a bad move, but I mean, Jed Fisher, he was pretty good
Mm-hmm.
at Arizona. So, Chooch, walk us through this year with Washington and what they did and why it was so important and monumental for this program.
So every game for this Washington team is we got to play Oregon. Same thing with Oregon. We got to play Washington. The second Washington beat Oregon, we knew something special was going to happen. Penix was making throws like it was his day job. Probably the most clutch man in college football this year, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Right.
Every time that team needed a big throw, he provided it, and he it was just insane how clutch this man was. But I worry about that offense coming into this after everything that's happening and what that offense is going to be like now. But that was a hell of a run, and every game after that Oregon game was a playoff game for these guys. So sadly, luck ran its course against Michigan, but it happens like that sometimes.
That's true. Jed Fisher coming into this program, I know, a lot of again question marks, a lot of scared per se Washington fans going like, hey, DePore, what a job he did. Can Fisher replicate that? Personally, I think he can. I think he can live up to the expectation and even, maybe go further than DeBoer did. Who knows? But what do you think about the Jed Fisher move, and do you think he's going to have an impact on this Washington program?
We'll see. I mean, DeBoer is a proven winner. Um, but yeah, but like you said, with the head coaching change, who knows? Um, the scheme could work better for where they're going for the Big Ten. So whatever he does is going to be key to the next steps here for Washington because I honestly was hoping DeBoer was going to stay and just kind of run rampant over the Big Ten with Oregon because I believe they're better than all the Big Ten. But yeah, it's going to be. I think we're going to see the same production, just in a different way. I think that defense stays prolifically athletic, but the offense is going to be scary. It's going to be scary for me to see what happens. If it's going to falter, is it going to be just as productive? Is the run game going to be better? I don't. We'll find out. hopefully it is. This man turned around a really good Arizona team.
Yeah, I mean that you nailed everything. I mean, Fisher coming into this team, if he can have that same fire that he did at Arizona, this is going to be a scary team to watch in the Big Ten. And also, you might get some hate from some of the Big Ten people there. Better than all the teams in the Big Ten. Oh man, we're gonna get some heat, but I love it.
Hey, I'm being completely honest.
All right, and then that leads one last team, which winning the national title, the Michigan Wolverines, obviously perfect season. Everything went right for them. Of course, there are some scandals going around about potentially cheating. We do not know what the NCAA is going to make about that in the coming years, so keep your eyes on that. But as for now, they're still the national champs, and they had quite the year to do it. A really good defense, really good offense led by Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, JJ McCarthy had some okay moments. I don't think he's fully what everybody says, but we'll see. And that's was kind of the MO, the smash mouth, crazed defense Michigan team that ended up taking home the title, led by Harbaugh, of course. Now, Chooch, let me begin with the question that I think everybody thinks about when you think about this Michigan team heading into next year. Do you think Harbaugh is still going to be the guy?
I hope. I would like to see that. I mean, also, it also seems. I mean, he thinks the head of the NCAA has it out for him, or the head of the Big Ten. You pick a poison there. But he got a national championship for his alma mater. To him, what else is there to do? I mean, you could start a dynasty and run roots over Ohio State forever. Granted, you'd be just as annoying as their fan base, but it would also be great to see Ohio State fans suffer. Man, it's conflicting because like I want him to stay, but I want him to go because I want him to go get that Super Bowl ring, you know?
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's tough. He could go, he could stay. I know there's been a lot of rumors about him going to the Falcons, which got kind of put away today, as Bill Belichick looks to be the leading man now. Also, the LA Chargers, and I've heard Vegas in that conversation a little bit for Harbaugh. So only time will tell on that. Heading into the next season, Chooch, do you think that we see this same Michigan mentality, this dominant Wolverines, or do you think they take a step back?
I think it depends on who head coach is. And also you put a team up against his Michigan offense that actually knows how to play, an offense that does, and that can score and that can put up points. Then we'll talk about it. But I think once they find a team that's like that, they're gonna struggle. Because that offense isn't good. It hasn't been great. It's been decent for a few years, but that's still the weak spot of this team. So if Harbaugh stays, that's what he's fixing. If someone else takes the spot, then that's what they gotta fix.
It's a very good point. Yeah. All right. Well, my last question of this show is, Chooch, out of this whole year, who, all in all, was the shocking team that came out of nowhere? And if you, because we went by sections, but now if you had to pick one that shocked either in a good or bad way, who is the ultimate shock of this season?
I mean, it's got to be the team I finished off with, Arizona. Um, it has to be after a abysmal 4 years of football. You know what I'm saying? This team was 1-11 in 2021. Okay, folks? They didn't win a single game in the year 2020, and they won 4 in 2019. So in 5 years, I'm sorry, in 4 years, they've gone from nobody to, hey, we're going to be the best football team in the state of Arizona again, and the Wildcats are going to be relevant to the situation here. Also, Oklahoma, this is for us. So that is the most surprising team.
I like that. Do. Obviously, we were talking on the show. I called Arizona the hottest team in college football, and I think everybody pretty much did because they were on fire. Nobody could beat them. Um, I'm gonna go a different side for the most surprising team out of the Big Ten, the Northwestern Wildcats. Hear me out. This team was terrible. Like one of the worst teams that we've seen, not to mention Fitz got fired in the first week, or even before that, I think. Somebody can, again, it was either first or like really early in the year, right before it, can't quite remember. And everybody's thinking about, like, oh man, this team's just going to be awful. And then out of nowhere, they started fighting. They had that OT victory against Minnesota where they had to come back from multiple scores. Then they came back down to earth and got whooped by Penn State. They eked out a win against Howard, and everybody again just like, Northwestern's going to go back to being nothing. They lost the battle of the end against Nebraska. But then something started to happen. They upset Maryland at home. They barely lost to Iowa. Then they beat Wisconsin in Camp Randall, beat Purdue at home, beat Illinois on the road in Champaign, and then to finish it off, shocked everyone. Well, maybe not everyone. There was a decent amount of people who thought that they were going to beat Utah, but they beat Utah 14-7. Um, so for me, just kind of that story of, oh man, they're not doing anything, and then boom, they just completely changed the narrative of their season. So I'm gonna go with Northwestern. All right. Well, Chooch, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap out?
Sorry, muted myself. I was sneezing. Next year is going to be a huge year for college football. Like we said, the balance of we'll see who found a balance between recruiting and transfer portal, but also now the power vacuum that is Nick Saban retiring is about to take full effect, and this might be a very hectic 5 years. Or if someone can stake their claim quickly, if Georgia gets back on top, LSU's like, hey, guess what? We've been playing second fiddle to you long enough. It's our turn to rule the roost with Brian Kelly, and Brian Kelly gets his. Um, Michigan could repeat. Who knows? Oregon could be a contender finally and win a national championship finally. Maybe Ohio State beats
Finally.
Michigan again, but find out in August, folks.
All right, that is a good note to end on because I agree with you. Like, this is going to be quite the year to where, like, quite literally anything could happen, and it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world because we're already expecting chaos. So, should be a fun year. Obviously, if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel. And keep up with us. I mean, we're gonna continue to cover. We of course we cover the NFL. We're covering college and all sorts of news. We're gonna have an episode about the transfer portal. We're gonna have an episode just about a lot of things college related. So definitely stick around because it might be the off season for them, but it ain't the off season for us. So let's finish as we always do. God bless you all in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Have a beautiful, blessed rest of your day, and we will see you later.